All right, we talked about what objects are last time. Now we're going to go about actually making some. So in Python and in most, you make classes for your different types of objects. So we're going to look at, here we're going to look at making a class and then making a specific instance of that class, making an object. So here I've made a class, I've called it person because we're going to use it for creating some players for a game. So the first thing we do in our class is we have an initialization. So an init function that runs every time we make a new object. And it has to be exactly like this. It's def space underscore underscore init underscore underscore. And then inside these brackets, we have the state principles that our object gets, that we have to give our object. The first one is always self. That refers to the object. And we'll look at what that means in a minute. We're going to give it a name, some hit points, some magic points, and attack, some items. So then the first things we do in our initialization, in our init function here, we do the object's name is going to equal the name that we put in. The object's maximum hit points is going to equal the hit points. The object's hit points currently are going to equal the hit points. The object's maximum magic power is going to be MP, and so on. I gave two attacks, attack high and attack low. Just for later on, it'll make sense when we're actually doing the game. So I just gave it was attack high. It's whatever we gave it for attack times 1.2, and attack low would be times 0.8. Then items will be whatever items we gave it, and I gave it an extra little function here, an extra little state, the actions that are possible, and all players are going to have the options for attack, magic, and use of items. We got our class definition. So we're going to use this class definition to make an object. It's not very hard to make an object. We're going to make our object. We give it a name. So I'm just going to put player1. And it is of type person. So we say we're calling on the person. And we're going to give it a name. And some hit points. 100 hit points we'll say. 50 magic points. We'll give him an attack of 20, and he's going to start off with no items, right there. So that's what we're giving him so far. Actually, we can do a little bit better here. Let's do this. We'll let the player input it. Yeah, so we'll let the player choose the character's name. So just we'll run this before we do anything else. Make sure there's no big errors. Oh, forgot to close off my input statement. So it's a good idea. A good thing I just did it in small chunks. So now we'll give them the same name. All right. And it's running to completion. We haven't said anything about it, so we're just going to get a little print statement so we get some stuff about our character. Just before we do that, we'll look over the init statement a little bit here. So we're creating an object called player1. So when we create this player1 object of type person, the self is player1, is the object player1. So the player1's name is the name that we input. The player1's maximum hit points is the hit points we input. The player1's items are the items we input. The player1's possible actions are these actions that are listed. So that's what self means. It's that object. It's referring to the object that we just made. So now we can print out some stuff. We're going to print out player1 dot name. So that'll print out our player1's name. And then I'm going to plus. Player1's max hit points are hit points. So now we're going to be able to print this little statement about here, and it should tell us the maximum hit points we have. So character name, once again, give them the same name. And we got HP not defined because it's not. I'm looking for the player1's hit points. All right, so player one's name, apostrophe S, max hit points are player one's hit points. Actually, we can do that even better. Player one's max hit points. Now we'll run this. Character name, Link, and Link's max hit points are 100. So that is how we created an object. Now we can get any of these sort of we can use any of these values for this object. We can also create a second object here. Just put enemy. Enemy one is still of type person. It's all right. He can have these things that I want, but we're going to give him a name. I can't remember any of the names of the bad guys in Zelda, so I'll just give him Soldier. And then his hit points will be not many, 20. He will have no magic, and his attack will be low. Yeah, we'll give him 5 attack. And he has no items. So we can do the same thing. We can make a print statement for our enemy. So now we have a print statement getting the player's name and telling us the hit points for the player, and we have a print statement getting the enemy's name and telling us the hit points for the enemy. So when we run this, once again, it's going to ask me my character's name. And it tells me the max hit points for my character are 100, the max hit points for the soldier are 20. So that is how we make objects. We define the class that we're going to make the object. This is the type of object we're going to do. And the first thing we need to do is initialize its state. So we give it all the state variables that we're going to need. You can use this template here. And what I'm going to get you to do is basically just play around with it, make some objects, and print out their properties. And that will be the little bit of assignment we're going to do here. I'm going to follow this up fairly quickly. We're going to look at how we add actions to this object. So remember that an object has both state and actions. So we have the state down. Now we're going to look at the actions next time.